The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Game Toppers, Scoobert Dubert Doo, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the gateway city, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board card and probably not role-playing games. Today, Abby joins Alex to review The Adventures of Robin Hood from Kosmos. Then Sean jumps in to look back at Dune Imperium and Lost Ruins of Arnak in a Dukes Quadruple-Take. And now, The Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And you're joining us for episode 267, which we're calling If You Want to Be My Archer.
Oh, you got to sing it, Sean.
Well, you got to sing it. Nobody wants me to sing. They want you to sing.
You got to sing it. Yeah, but you read the episode titles if it were in the best of the rest.
If you want to be my archer, you've got to shoot your bow with an arrow. See?
That's pretty good.
Terrible. That's terrible.
No.
It's terrible on so many levels.
Okay. Look, I was impressed. I was impressed with your improvisational skills.
And my wonderful falsetto. So that episode title is from guild member Kyle Kelly. That's from the Spice Girls, a 90s hit from the Spice Girls. And what does Dune produce? What does the planet Arrakis produce? It produces the Spice Melange. So there's the Spice Girls. And then the Archer instead of Lover from Robin Hood. So that's some good stuff there, Kyle.
Well, and Abby is my lover.
Please don't say that. That's weird. That's weird and gross.
What? What's gross about that?
Well, have you seen the Lovers sketch on Saturday Night Live?
100%.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yes.
So thanks again, Kyle Kelly. We get help naming all of our episodes from our Board Game Geek Guild, which is guild number 2008 over on Board Game Geek. I think I said Board Game Geek already, but that's fine. And so we've got some other episode title suggestions that we'll give you at the end of the episode. So definitely stay tuned for that, because that's really all people are here for, is to see what those were. Who cares about the board games? Just give me those title suggestions.
That's right. Most popular part of the show.
Alex, how you doing?
I am tired, Sean.
Yeah.
I will say, being a parent can be stressful sometimes when it got bitterly cold in St. Louis last night. We're talking lows in the single digits. You're talking 6-7 degrees. I know Berkey and some other folks up in Minnesota might laugh at that. It's cold for here. And Ruby's room has heating. The whole top floor has heating, but her crib is close enough to the wall and the window where it got chillier in there than I would have liked. She was totally fine, but you notice on the baby monitor it's 56 degrees, and then you're feeling your hands, and they're a little icicle-y, and you're like, I don't know about this. So...
Do I have to call Child Protective Services?
No.
Okay.
She's fine. I rescued her from... The cold never bothered her anyway. She slept fine. She's doing fine. But it is one of those that I definitely had a late night worrying and fretting about the temperature. Mm-hmm. It climbed back up. I had the door to the nursery open. That normalized the temperature a little bit more. So she's doing better now, but it was just one of those late nights, and I've had a few of them this week. So I'm a little ragged.
Well, Alex, as someone who deals with Child Protective Services on a frequent basis, I should tell you that at that tender age, she lacks a self-protective capacity. So you must be extra vigilant.
Yes. I am. Whether I want to be or not, I am. So, Ruby, sweet little kicking baby, but takes some mental energy. Yeah. Anyway.
That they do.
Yes, they do. They are, babies and human beings that need care and raising and all that good stuff. So, that's my life right now. Not a ton else other than that going on, I guess. What about you?
Busy, Alex. Busy. For those that heard last episode, we're expanding. We rented out, or we're leasing the suite next to us, expanding into that. We don't have a new hire yet. We don't have a new attorney yet. And it's starting to freak me out. Basically, I have ads posted on some online sites, and they're getting like no hits. So I don't know if I'm doing something weird or wrong. But then the other big thing, we have our State of New Mexico bar bulletin that comes out every week. That's, I think, where most attorneys look for jobs. But the problem is the first ad is not going to appear until February 9th.
Oh, no.
Just because of the production time in these weekly bar bulletins. So a little nervous, kind of putting some feelers out there. I've talked to some other attorneys and just telling them, hey, I know, if you hear people that are looking for jobs or whatever. So I don't know, a little nervous, but it's still exciting. But the really difficult part is that there's a lot of ramp up right now. On a typical week, I probably do about 4 to 5 consultations in a given week. Did I mention this last episode?
You did mention this. Yeah, and they're ramping up.
And well, I did 15 last week. So
yikes.
Yeah, a lot of early mornings to actually like do work and late night to do work because I'm just bombarded with consultations. So that's my life right now. It's a lot of fun, Alex.
You're a busy bee.
I am a very busy bee. Buzz, as we busy bees like to say.
Okay. Well, Sean, it sounds like you need ZipRecruiter. If you're looking to find the next perfect hire, check out ZipRecruiter at ziprecruiter.com. Oh, no, we're not actually sponsored by anyone. Never mind.
Yeah, if you go to ziprecruiter.com/Dukes of Dice, it's our affiliate link. It's not.
It's not. And to be clear, I said we're not sponsored by anyone. We are still sponsored by someone. My apologies, Berkey. I've already given you 2 shout-outs now. This is off the rails. We're officially off the rails. Let's talk board games.
Sure, let's do it. Alex, you go first because I really want to hear about well, can you talk them out of order that they're listed?
Oh, this is okay. So behind the scenes peek, we have a set of show notes that we have for every show. And sometimes, just being the roguish gentleman I am, I will read them out of order.
Of course.
And I have more than once had Sean not be happy with that decision to read them out of order.
I don't know that that's ever been the case.
No, it's absolutely, yes.
I don't care. I don't care what order you read them in.
Yeah, it was either you or it was Daniel Justin King, the Game Boy Geek. Anyway, I have gotten criticism for reading these out of order. I will do it just for you, Sean. So, last episode, Sean talked about Baseball Highlights 2045, the dice game. Although, I looked on the box, and I think to be clear, it's just Baseball Highlights, the dice game.
True, yes.
It has a robot on the cover, so it has the 2045 branding and sort of the look to it.
There's a cyborg, too.
Yeah, there's a cyborg. It's clearly off of that game, but genuinely, it could just be called Baseball, the dice game.
Yeah.
And it would have about as much resemblance to Baseball Highlights. To be clear, there are some times when the dice game version of something will be clearly linked mechanically to something that happens. This is not one of those cases in my book.
No.
You can maybe debate that there's sort of threatened hits, like folks on base are kind of threatened, but it's really not the case.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so, but in any case, Sean, you were raving about this game last episode. Raving, absolutely raving. Had played it several times in a row and said, I have to play this before the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
I am a man of my word. I said I would, and I did. I played this 2-player with Patrick, a friend here locally. And for folks, I'll just do a quick recap on the rules. Very simple. Basically, you roll a whole pool of dice. You'll sort them into different groupings of single, double, triple, home run, walk, stolen base. And then you'll grab, for your turn, if you're the primary player, all dice of that type, which will then check off boxes. Those boxes will feed into other boxes. If you've ever played a game like Gone Shown Clever, you know this sort of chain reaction of I check this thing, which lets me check this thing, which lets me check that thing. The big key, and this was not in the prototype version I played of this, or if it was, I didn't read it well, and oops, is for a number of the boxes along the way, you don't get the benefit of going across it unless it's the last dice you place of the turn.
Right.
And it's incredibly clever and sets up really interesting situations when you have that as a restriction, because it may make logical sense to just take the most of something. I'm just going to take the 5 walks to check off my walk box, or I'm just going to take 4 home runs. Well, in doing so, you might actually give up a home run or give up a chance to score runs that way. Let's add to that, there's a pitcher die which can sweep folks off the bases, and you have to time things out really well. You have to be intelligent with your timing. So I played this game, and it was an exciting game of this, Sean. It went to extra innings. We had to do the extra innings rules,
Nice.
which are quite fun. Basically, you take all of the power die you've accumulated over the game, roll them, check off boxes corresponding, see if anyone's won, and then go from there. So what did I think of this game? I think it represents baseball quite well. I think functionally it plays really well. You can enjoy this even if you're not a baseball fan, which I appreciate, and is sort of part of the appeal of the original baseball highlights. The only negative I'll say has to do with the production and the theming in a sense, which is to say, by typical standards, this is not a poorly produced game. I would just say it has a flat feeling to it. It has a generic baseball feeling to it. There isn't a ton of life in the game. There's not a ton of color. There's a ton of exciting moments just based on how well designed the game is, but there isn't a lot of flavor. So the dice are of high quality. The sheets are good. There just isn't. There's a lot of functionality and not a lot of pizzazz and style and flash. And some of what this is something I mentioned with Football Highlights 2052. Part of what I love about Baseball Highlights is it takes this world of future baseball with a retro a sheen over the top of it, and has little nods to combos of players, and has nods to robot names for this batter, and this person's with this team and this person's with that team, and there's a team building element, and there's a flavor to it. There's a theme that's really engrossing and engaging. It feels like baseball, which I like. It doesn't have any of the other stuff within the highlights universe that has me really be super engaged. So, all that to say, I think it's a good to great game with a sort of flat rest of it, which isn't necessarily anything in the game itself, but more of kind of the polish and the other stuff around it. So, oddly, Sean, I think I'm lower on this one than you. Not by a huge amount, but yeah.
I almost feel like that's to be expected because of maybe not necessarily expectations based on your love of Baseball Highlights 2045, but I don't know if that makes any sense. I think that makes a certain amount of sense. So let me ask you this: how many times did you play in that session?
Just the one.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we played once. We played once, and then wanted to play again, and then we wanted to play a third time, just back to back to back. Rory wanted to play a fourth time that night. I probably would have, but I knew we needed to get like dinner going. And then even last night we played, and it was getting a little late. I would have loved to have played another game. I mean, so I'm going to be perfectly honest. This is a 6 for me. Like,
wow.
Well, I think it's unless Hadrian's Wall counts as a roll and write or flip and write, which I'm not convinced it is. This is my favorite roll and write. I'm very certain of that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I did suggest playing it again and would have happily played a second game back to back of this. But it would be more in the 4 or 5 range for me.
Wow.
But as you said, I think this makes perfect sense for 2 reasons. One, so much love for the original that if it doesn't capture the flavor and some of the mechanisms and whatever else, it's going to have a hard time living up to that. But 2, where this game shines is at its very core, is at that mechanic of what do I grab? How do I manipulate these tracks? How do I set this up from a timing standpoint? And it's fast, but has enough notes of cleverness that it can be really engaging. And I think that at the core of it is what really draws you into the game. For me, the success of Baseball Highlights isn't just mechanically, I think it's a brilliant game, and I know you do as well. It's a game you love too. But it's that theme. The theme is something I'm so absolutely passionate about, and that building your own team and finding the synergies and seeing the nods and seeing the art and feeling this future retro world be brought to life. That's a big part of the appeal of that game to me. And it's not there. It's just not there with this.
No.
And clearly for you, that doesn't matter, right? Baseball isn't something that's necessarily a passion or a love or something that is a deep part of why you would come to a game like this. So I think it makes perfect sense from that standpoint. That's Baseball Highlights, the dice game from Eagle Griffin. I certainly liked it. But Sean, the fact that this is a 6 for you is incredible.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. Well, Alex, I played a little game called Picture Perfect. This is from Arcane Wonders. And this is a game, Alex, that I think you would enjoy quite a bit. Quite a bit. It's a deduction game, which listener Tiger Mom on Twitter kind of said, oh, wait a second, Sean's not a huge fan of deduction games. And she's right, typically speaking. I don't mind certain deduction games, but they're not kind of my go-to. Not nearly as bad as say Hidden Movement, but not usually crazy about deduction games. But there's kind of an interesting, almost a toy factor here, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to take a picture. Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing already?
I'm just looking. I read the concept of this as you were about to talk about the concept of this.
So the last thing you're going to do is you're going to take a picture of your own play area. You have this little floorboard. You have this table, this little cardboard table, like a dining table or a picnic table or something. And then you have 14 of these standees that are semicircular around that table. And then you're taking a picture of them because you're a photographer. And this is all, what's like late 18th century, late 1800s. What is that? Victorian era? I think it's Victorian era.
Maybe.
Or maybe it's like early 1900s. I'm not sure. No, I think it's early 1900s. Anyway, doesn't matter. You're taking a picture of all these folks, but here's the thing. You are trying to position them around the table consistent with 3 rules for each one of them. So at the start of the game, you have these envelopes that have the pictures of the standees, and then you shuffle up all of these rules. And some rules will say, you need to be on the left side of the table. You need to be in the middle of the table. You need to be on actually next to the table or away from the table. You need to be in the first row or the second row. You need to be next to this character, or you want to make sure this character is covered up in the photo. And so you have all of these rules, but at the start of the game, you only get to see 3 of the characters and see all of their rules. And so based on that, you might start placing your standees out. And by the way, this is all hidden. You have the screen surrounding your board so the other players can't see. And so you might have, I know the rules for these 3 players or these 3 standees, and sometimes the rules are contradictory. Like you might get a standee that says, I don't want my face seen. And then there's also a rule that says, I don't want to stand behind someone. You're like, well, okay, great. How's that going to work? But that's fine. It's fine. Because at the end of the game, for each of the standees that you have on your board, if you have fulfilled all 3 rules, not rolls, all 3 rules, you're going to get 6 points for each. If you fulfill 2, you get 3. If you fulfill 1, you get 1. And if you don't fulfill any of the rules, you get minus some amount. I think it's minus 3. If they're not on the board, because maybe you don't have enough information about them, you don't want to risk it, just keep them off. You won't lose any points for it. But now what's really interesting, so this is kind of like a clue, right? In Clue, you're trying to deduce, which person it was with which weapon in which room. And there's this sort of rote, like I move around the board and then I get access to information. Here, the access to information is through these weird event cards. Some of them are like these weird auctions. So eventually you're shuffling around some of the cards and you have some choice in the matter. You're also bidding on access to some of these cards. Someone could say, okay, this event, we take turns auctioning off 2 of the unknown cards in the middle. And then you pay that with decorations. Everyone has a certain number of decorations to start the game with, and that's basically your currency. And so by the end of the game, you may have seen maybe 10 out of the 14. And you're placing them out there. You're making some guesses. Maybe you've got one where this person wants to be next to this other person, but you have no other information about that other person. And you're just like, well, maybe I'll put them out and I'll at least score the points because that'll be my third set for this, the known person, the known standee. And hopefully I don't lose points. Hopefully I don't completely just whiff on this other person. Interesting decisions to be made there. And like I said, at the end, you have to kind of get in really close because you're not allowed to take a picture if anything other than game components are in the picture. So you have your screen, you have your table, you have your floor, you have the standees, and it's it was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. Not so much I'm gonna go out and buy it and we're gonna play it at the house here all the time, but it was cool. There was, like I said, this cool toy factor. Um, the deduction wasn't it wasn't as strong of a feature as it might seem like it would be at first glance. Really, it was how do I manipulate which cards I'm letting others see, which cards I'm getting to see, and auctions. I like auctions. So I think you would dig this a lot. A
It
lot.
looks fun. Oh, no,
Yeah.
no. Thematically, it looks really cool.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I'm into it.
yeah. So yeah, that's Picture Perfect, designed by Anthony Nouveau and from Arcane Wonders.
Very cool. Sean, this is just, we're raining down positivity to this week because we discussed last week games that we thought from 2021 might have a chance at being in the top 100 eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned, I think there's a chance Arc Nova specifically will get in there. And I had a chance to play this at Jamie's game night last week, and I am thoroughly convinced this will be in the top 100. If you get a chance to play this, Sean, it will be a 5 or a 6, and I would bet more on it being a 6 than a 5
Wow.
for you. It is really good, and I know there's a lot of buzz and hype about this game. I think it's all well-deserved, especially because there are so many gamers who really love a game like Terraforming Mars and want more of that. I remember when that game came out, Sean. It was on the table at game night every single week.
Oh yeah.
Arc Nova has elements of that in spades. So, let's talk about this game. It's from Capstone, designed by first-time designer. All credit to him. And it's a German name, but it's Wigge. So Wigge, I don't quite know, but Matthias is the first name of this designer. This is a game where you are building a zoo. Each player has a board where you are quite literally building a zoo in front of you. You have different kinds of cards. You have animal cards. You have sponsored exhibit cards. You have biological objective cards, effectively. And on your turn, you are going to do one action. How powerful that action is will depend on where the card you're choosing for that action is in the row. So let me take a half step back and explain. In front of your board, there are 5 slots for 5 cards. The cards are things like play animals out as an action, or draw more cards, or construct new enclosures to put the animals into, or gain a sponsorship, or do an association task. They're in a line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are the slots. The further to the right the card is, the more powerful the action is that you can take with that card. So as an example, the cards, drawing a cards action, if it's in slot 1, I draw a card from the deck, and I discard a card. If it's on slot 5, though, I'm drawing 3 cards and discarding one of those cards. Once I use that action, though, the card pops out of line wherever it is. Everything else behind it slides up, and then you move that card to the front of the line. So you could, in theory, do the same action over and over and over and over again, but it's going to be a weak version of that action. And the real crux of this game is building up enough power in the actions to make the most of them when you take them. So there's a lot of interesting planning just with the order in which you take the actions and trying to unlock interesting puzzles as you go about this. Let's add another twist, Sean. When you hit certain parts of the tracks or accomplish certain milestones, you get to upgrade those action cards to get even more powerful abilities. On the back of the build and enclosure side, as an example, you're now able to build a reptile house or an aviary, which allows you to play birds and snakes in more efficient ways onto your zoo. So you lower the construction costs and are able to fit the animals into more spots that way. If you take, say, the draw cards one, you get to draw more cards. But there are certain actions or certain parts of the board and certain cards that you will not have access to even be able to play until you've upgraded that card. and you're probably not going to be upgrading all 5 cards. And there's good justification. There's not a clean, simple answer for, oh, you should always do this one first, and you should always do this one next, and you should always do this one. There's valid reasons why you would do these in a different order, because there are multiple strategies that can emerge from this. The cards themselves have that terraforming Mars kind of feel to them in a lot of ways, where they have prerequisites or they have requirements. They have ways you can discount the costs, but they build off of each other. So I need to, for instance, have some sort of connection to zoos in Australia if I want to be able to play this koala out to an enclosure in my zoo. Well, I've got to work to that. I've got to build up to that card, but once I play it, it's going to be powerful. It's going to increase the appeal of my zoo, which helps increase my income. It might increase my biological diversity or kind of the reputation of the zoo in that way. So let me take a half step back and talk about scoring. You have 2 markers. You have one on either end, kind of Rajas of the Ganges style, if you remember that game, Sean.
Yep, I do.
One's the conservation, one's the attractiveness of the zoo. The game end trigger is when one person has those 2 meet, passing ships in the night on the track. Your score is how far past each other those can go. So, if you can get your ticket 1 to go 16 past where the conservation one is, your score is 16. I think if I were to talk any more extensively about rules and other things here, I'm basically getting into a review. Needless to say, it was incredibly thematic. It was really clever in its core mechanism. Very satisfying game, and I can see why it's so highly regarded. And I think, Sean, you will adore this game.
Wow.
Now, the only reason it might not quite hit Terraforming Mars level of high for you.
Theme.
Yeah. I like the theme a lot, but it's not for some people. Being able to build up Mars together is a cool thing. What I liked about the zoo piece, though, Sean, is you're building on your own board. You're constructing stuff in your own zoo. I'm making my zoo to where it's more reptile themed, or I have a rhinoceros over here, and I've got this is the petting zoo over here, and this is where my zoo school is, and there's something that you're kind of making your own as you're building this up. So from that standpoint, I really liked it. It did not feel like multiplayer solitaire. In describing it, it might sound like it could be. It didn't feel like that to me. I think this game's real good, Sean, and I think this is going to be a hot one at conventions and in game group tables, should any of that stuff resume in earnest later this year. I will say, Sean, I did buy tickets to a convention. I'm going to Geekway to the West coming up in May. So,
okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
Cool.
That is Ark Nova. I strongly recommend this one, and I think Sean would too.
And it's not available yet, right?
Yeah, if memory serves, it should be hitting stores sometime soon, but yeah, it's not available widely yet.
Yeah, because this was Jamie's copy, right?
This was Jamie's copy.
Doesn't he have, he has access to it because he's partnered with the publisher or something?
I don't know.
Oh,
he had a copy and I enjoyed playing it. I don't ask questions, Sean.
Okay.
Sometimes I just want to play a game, and that's what I did.
Folks, don't go start looking for Ark Nova just yet because it's not there. So
get your copy reserved though, because man, that thing's good. Just saying.
So, Alex, I have a question for you.
Yes?
Who is widely regarded to be one of the wisest kings of ancient time?
King Arthur?
No, what? No.
What?
I don't think so. Why? What wisdom? Who's regarded?
Well, when you said wisdom, I thought Merlin for a moment.
And also ancient. That's like the Dark Ages. That's the early medieval period. That's not ancient times. Get your history right, man.
All right, why don't you just give me the answer? Because clearly I'm not providing.
Who's the wisest king in terms of
literally the next name that came to mind was Merlin, which he's not a king. So I don't think you're going to get this answer out of my sleep-deprived brain, Sean.
Solomon.
Oh, okay.
So the wisdom of Solomon? Really?
Oh, yeah. All right.
Anyway, so one thing I like about...
Wait. But time out here.
Yeah.
Is Solomon a biblical reference?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
He was the king of Israel.
Okay. Sorry.
Wow. Okay.
Carry on.
Anyway, so there's this thing called the Solomon cut, Alex. And it comes from the story of where two women...
Cutting. Yeah.
Yeah, they cut the baby, or, he says, I'll cut the baby and you can each have a half. And one woman's like, yes, of course. Haha. And the other woman's like, no, let her have the baby. And he's like, well, you must be the true mother because you would rather see the baby live than be split in twain. Although I don't think he said twain. But the Solomon cut is something I've enjoyed. And it's something that I taught my friends in high school. Whenever we would go to lunch, we'd leave campus, we'd go to Peter Piper Pizza. Two of us would split a large pizza. And to be fair and equitable, to divide the pizza in half, one person chooses the dividing line, the other person chooses which side they get, and the other person gets. That's the Solomon cut. I love the Solomon cut. In board games, it's I split, you choose. I love I split, you choose. It's not used in a whole lot of games, but I love it. So this game from WizKids is called Bequest. The theme is you're like some sort of villain, and you're dividing up the estate of a dead supervillain. And so that's what this is. And you're doing this through an I split, you choose method. And it's basically Seven Wonders, but instead of drafting, it's I split, you choose. And so basically there are different types of cards that score points in different ways. So there are these majority cards that are very similar to having military and Seven Wonders. There's Western Hemisphere influence and Eastern Hemisphere influence, and the more of those you collect, there's a majority bonus if you have a greater amount than your two neighbors, or maybe a little bit less of a bonus if you have greater than only one of your neighbors. It's actually equal to or greater. There are these technology cards. There are different types of technologies, and they score more points the more of each set that you have, kind of like technology or science, I think, in Seven Wonders. You also have these treasure cards, which also kind of score geometrically. So the first one's worth 1 point. The second one is worth an additional 2 points, so 3 points total. The third one's worth another 3 points, so that's 6. And then you also have schemes, which are sort of these end game scoring cards that are kind of driving you down a particular path. And then you also have, I'm trying to think, what are the other? Oh, you have these layers, and these layers just have like a flat value, sometimes negative, sometimes positive. But then there's also evidence cards. And if you have 1 or 2 evidence cards, nobody cares. But if you have 3 or more evidence cards, they're minus 3 points each, or $3 each. So you don't want to get those. But of course, you're simultaneously splitting. I believe it's 5 cards. So they're 5 rounds, and then everybody gets 5 cards, and simultaneously you're picking 2 halves. You put them to the player on your left in the first round, second round to the right, and you keep going back and forth. And then once everyone has placed their cards down, then you'll look at the cards that have been placed in front of you. Your opponents look at the cards that have been placed in front of them, and then you choose if you're going to take pile A or pile B. You put a little chip down to show which one it is. You flip it over. And so I get all of the ones I've chosen. In addition, I'm going to get all the ones the person that I passed to did not take. So you could see where, hey, I really know that you want these Western Hemisphere influence cards. And so I'm going to give you 2 of them right now. And that's going to let you come over top of me, come over top of the other person. But I'm going to make you take these evidence cards that might hurt you too. The other interesting thing is that in each of the 5 rounds, there are these 3, I believe they're called key cards. And they're key 1, key 2, key 3. And that determines the order that you get to pick one of 3 of these like special cards that are in the middle. And they could be just about any of the different types. So it's kind of interesting. I liked this game a lot. It was, I love I split, you choose. I love that. It was a very simple kind of Seven Wonders style, but I think on the face of it, the decisions are much more interesting. And it's so great when you get 2 piles and you're just like, wow, this person did a masterful job of splitting these, right? Because it's really hard for me to choose. But I think the other thing too is in Seven Wonders, there's a little bit of like paying attention to your neighbors, a fair amount. In this game though, it's huge. It's incredibly huge because you know that they're making a very difficult decision about which cards you give them. And you're also trying to make it in some situations where there's this one card I absolutely need, and I need to place it in such a way that there's no way they're going to take it. Maybe I give them 4 cards, so I'm insured, more or less insured to get this 1 card. I don't know. I thought it was great. Also, you have asymmetric player powers, so it's kind of like it already has the leaders expansion built in. I thought this was great. I really liked it. Theme was fine. I didn't care that much about the theme, but it was a great game. It was a really great. I mean, I think we played it in about 30 minutes. We played with 4 players. It plays up to 6, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. I was really impressed with it. We played 4 games last night at Dukes of Dice Wednesday night. We played The Hunger, which is a future review we're doing by Richard Garfield. Then we played Picture Perfect. Then we played Bequest. Then we played Baseball Highlights, the dice game. Take Baseball Highlights out of the equation. This was my favorite game of the night. I liked it a lot. And I think you did get well enough.
No, the theme and the combination of mechanics sounds right up my alley. Sean, I looked up while you were discussing. I Cut, You Choose is what it's officially known as mechanically on BGG.
Okay.
Can you name the top 3 games linked to this mechanic?
I don't think I can. And I think that's kind of a crappy thing. Because if I enjoy this mechanic so much, why haven't I sought this out more?
It's not common, because I will tell you that the top ranked game for this mechanic is 151 overall on BGG.
Okay. All right. Yeah, give them to me.
Castles of Mad King Ludwig.
Oh, yeah.
This next one I would have named because this is one of Abby's absolute favorite games. Hanamakoji.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love Hanamakoji. Yeah.
And then rounding out the top 3, ranked 445 overall on BGG, Junk Art.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's a fine little dexterity game.
Yeah, so there you go. Not a supremely common mechanic, but I will tell you, Sean, back when I was at Gray Fox, I played a prototype of a game that was I Cut, You Choose plus worker placement that I thought was really good. It has not been published yet, and I think is unlikely to be, barring some other circumstances, because the designer unfortunately passed away. But really enjoyable game that blended those two things. Anyway, yeah,
cool.
Very cool.
Not cool that he died, but
no, not that part. Not so much. No. Anyway, on that bummer of a note, after the break, Abby and I jump in and review The Adventures of Robin Hood. We'll see you then. Well, Sean, the Game Toppers 3.0 Kickstarter is in the books, and thanks to a whole bunch of backers, Game Toppers had a heck of a Kickstarter campaign, more than $800,000 raised to get more Game Toppers, new features, all sorts of fun stuff headed folks' way.
Wait, did you say 800,000?
I did say that amount. Yes.
Oh my goodness, that's a ton of money.
Sean, did you make it in time? Are you part of that group?
It's over? It's over? Like over?
No, it's done. I'm sorry you missed your window. But the good news, Sean, is that if you keep an eye on the Game Toppers LLC website, the late pledge manager should be open in the near future. Take a look there, and you can still get in on all the fun, get the newest features, get yourself a Watson, or get yourself, I don't know, whatever you want. Awesome game mats, rails, something cool to really take your gaming experience to the next level without getting a fully dedicated gaming table, which is exactly what Game Toppers is all about. Check them out, GameToppersLLC.com, because if it ain't a showstopper, it ain't a Game Topper. This week, with Sean off busy being a lawyer, we're bringing in the big guns. Well, we're bringing in guns anyway. It's Abby. Abby, my wife, who's going to join in.
Rude.
This whole thing. I've botched this. Okay, wait. I need to set this. So normally this would be...
birthed our child,
okay,
and I'm not even the big gun?
Okay, hang on. Normally this would be a moment where I would say something clever and Sean will play the intro music and it'd be something like, is it Robin Hood or is it Robin No Good? We'll tell you. But, I mean, maybe he'll jump in and do it anyway. I'm not sure. Future Sean can tell. But let me set the stage this way, Abby. There was an infamous episode of the Dukes of Dice where instead of playing the game that we were supposed to review, I went and had a bunch of margaritas instead.
I'm familiar.
This is the evolution of the episode where I have absolutely played this game plenty of times, have coherent thoughts on it, I think. But then I've also had tonight, in celebration of something I can't say, so many margaritas. So many margaritas. So this will be an adventure, much like this game, The Adventures of Robin Hood. But before we get into that, how are you, my beautiful wife, mother of my child?
I'm good. I just put down our child to sleep after we had to wake her up from a nap so that she could also go to bed at her bedtime.
Yeah, parent logic, right?
Yeah. I mean, we tried that one time and she was not pleased about it. Seems like we handled this one a little bit better. Get the bath ready. Just dunk her in so she doesn't even know what's happening.
Yeah.
And then just get her back ready for bed.
Yeah, she was in the groove. She was well behaved tonight. All good. Yeah. Pleasant baby times this evening.
Yeah. I mean, you stopped work at 5 when she went down for her nap. She slept until 7:30. We gave her a bath, read her a book, fed her, and she was back asleep by 8. So, again, I mean, half hour with your kid and she's not crying. Pretty easy.
Life is good. Life is good. I had other times during the course of the day where I was...
I'm not saying that
Yeah,
you're
that was
you're a bad father or anything.
Wow.
I'm just saying, when you were like, it's been an easy evening, like, yeah, she's been asleep for all of but a half hour of it. Like, yes, it has been an easy evening.
You could have just said, it has been an easy evening.
And you could have called me the big guns, but you didn't.
Abby Big Guns Goldsmith in for the review. Okay. Let's get into the actual format of an actual review here. So we're talking about The Adventures of Robin Hood, and we've got to be a little bit cagey in how we discuss this game because this is a story-based campaign game. So I'll talk about basic mechanics, and I'll give the warning that there could be some slight spoilers, kind of, even in describing mechanics here, because some of what I'm going to describe is going past the first mission, which is effectively a tutorial. So if you're really desperate not to have absolutely anything spoiled, we'll do our best, but it's a little bit unavoidable to talk about this game in any substance without going a little bit into the game. Just a little bit. Little baby bit. Effectively, you are Robin Hood and his merry men trying to gallivant around the Sherwood Forest and castle, trying to finish a task of some kind. It could be any number of different possible quests, but you're trying to complete the quest before a set amount of time ends and you reach the bad end. If you can reach a good end, you'll advance to the next mission. If you fail a mission, there is a second version of that mission with slightly different things to it, so it's not exactly a repeat of the first mission, which I think was a nice piece of design, as we'll talk about. Effectively, how this works is there's going to be a big bag with a bunch of discs in it. Discs of different colors, colors representing the players, colors representing bad stuff happening, and colors that are neutral that you can kind of use to have someone take an extra turn effectively. So you'll draw a disc out of the bag and do whatever that is. If it's one of the characters, typically that turn structure will look like move, decide whether to investigate or attack something, and that's it. That's effectively a turn. Combat in this game, relatively straightforward. If you want to attack something, you will draw 3 cubes out of this very same bag that holds the discs. If you draw a white cube at any point in 3 draws, you stop drawing, you've defeated the enemy in most cases. And boy howdy, it's really, really simple mechanically. Let's talk about other things. If you're examining something, you have to be standing next to it. It could be a person with a little question mark over their head. You will then look up that page in a storybook that comes with this game, and it will, depending on the mission you're on, have you do something. Might add to your combat strength. It might advance the story. Sometimes you'll have options. Sometimes you won't. That is effectively the game. Abby, I showed you the cover of this when we talked about the Spiel and Counterspiel nominees, and you thought the cover of this looked absolutely atrocious. What were your first impressions going in of this game before having played it at all?
So, yeah, you had shown me the cover prior to playing the game, and it looked not good. I was not into it, really. This is definitely not one that I would have gravitated towards at Miniature Market. Not my style. It looks too sort of realistic in a way that is just unappealing to me. But then when you got the game, having a small child and all, game time is limited, and so you said you were going to set it up and learn how to play it so that when we did have a time, we could just get into it and there wasn't any sort of setup. So the game was set on our table, just waiting, and I saw it, walk past it one evening and kind of looked at it, and I came upstairs and was like, that game looks really cool because of just the way the board and the pieces and the book and everything are. It's very, on the table, it looks really cool and different from any other game.
In the Kennerspiel I trust is sort of where I came in on this game on. If it's nominated for the Spiel or Kennerspiel, and this was a Spiel nominee, not a winner, I believe, it usually is a good indication that the game has a decent amount of merit. There have been very few games that have been nominated for that award that I have disliked. That's not to say I haven't had my criticisms of the award sliding towards lighter and lighter games, and this game is no exception. I would say mechanically quite light and relatively straightforward and simple to play, although that's not a bad thing, as we'll discuss. But my impressions going into this were the Spiel and Kennerspiel don't tend to let me down often. I'll give it a try. I didn't know anything about it mechanically or what really set it apart. I knew there was maybe a story element to this. But I'm not a huge Robin Hood fan. It's not an IP that really grabs my attention or something I'm excited about necessarily. So, I don't know. Came in with kind of a blank slate with the thought that it would probably be more likely to be better than worse, just based on past experience with the category of game. Also, though, worth noting that this is a game by Kosmos, and as we've been discussing recently, they put out some bangers. Kosmos has some hit titles in this household, whether it be the Exit series of games, whether it be Targi. They tend to have way more hits than misses. So just the Kosmos name alone on a box oftentimes is an indicator that this could be a pretty interesting experience. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, not about the Spiel and Kennerspiel stuff, because I don't know anything about that. Just the Kosmos bit.
All right. Well, fair enough. So let's get into rules. This is one of those games that attempts to teach you as you play. So it's not a heavy set of rules, and in fact, the game has a quick start guide which only describes the movement rules and movement situations and gives you some basic instructions along the lines of dump all the wooden bits in the middle of the table, line up the game board, and then you're pretty much ready to go. It gets you off to a hot start. And effectively the first mission, this is I believe an 7 mission campaign. The first mission of that is just a tutorial. It's just you wake up, Little John's been captured. Oops, Little John's got to fight some folks off, help rescue him. But it's set up in such a way where you would have a very hard time losing that mission. And really, it's just to show you the mechanics of movement, of combat, of getting into the game. It then unfolds the rules as you go. So there is a rule book that you get access to later, but the game tells you basically don't look at this until, the second or third game of the campaign. I have some quibbles with how this game teaches and kind of the rules environment of this game, as simple as it is. But before that, Abby, how did you find this game to learn? How did you find getting this game into your brain?
Yeah, I mean, generally when we play games, I learn with it set up. Like, I don't read the rule book, you teach it to me. So this didn't feel that different. The most different thing was that we were both sort of learning at the same time. Usually we go in with you knowing more than I do, whereas this one was like, what do I do? And you're like, move. Oh, okay, here we go. And we just we're figuring it out together.
Yeah. And my quibble with this one, though, is it will... The game uses both a rule book, which has all of the rules nicely laid out in some ways, but prior to that, it has these odd sections of the book that you are supposed to mark with ribbons. So within the storybook, it has sections of, here's your character's special feature. You can look it up in the back. Here are these items. You can look them up in the front. But it'll also give certain situations within it, which will say, hey, if this happens, lose to hope. If this happens, do this, which aren't necessarily readily available. It's not like there's some sort of player aid or guide. There is a rule book. These things are researchable in some ways, but we found ourselves fumbling with that book from time to time, trying to figure out, oh, did this happen? What happens here? What happens in this case? And a lot of that's done to serve the story, but I would say it was a rockier experience than I might have wanted in a lot of cases, just going back into the book. Did that bug you?
No. I mean, it didn't bug me in a way where I felt like it hindered the playability of the game. I think the biggest issue is like we've been playing it pretty consistently, and like if we took a week or two between, that would really become a hindrance, and remembering the things you learned from the previous play and the rules that applied from that play could be difficult.
Yeah. Let's move on from there to art and components, because I think this game has pros and cons in this regard. On the pro side, as you mentioned, oh man, does this look cool on the table. It is a storybook. It's kind of an advent calendar is the best way to describe it. Basically, it's a double-layered player board where on what you have what's left behind, you have what you reveal when you pull it up, basically. You have one side of the token and the other side of the token. So for certain missions, the blacksmith's wife is on the board, and some missions she's not, and you just flip it over when that's not the case. For some missions, this number of guards is out. For other missions, they're not there at all. Carriages appear and disappear. But the world itself has this movement and feel to it, and a lot of it is because of this component system. Something happens over at the church. Well, now there's a permanent reflection of that on that building. But not every one of those tiles is functional, and some of them are tied to certain missions. Some of them are just tied to aesthetic and being immersive. But it's a really innovative system that they use. This advent calendar embedded within the board. I don't know. It felt lively to me, and this was certainly something you really were attracted to.
Yeah, I really liked it. It's really fun and interactive. The game has a lot of decision making in a way of you have the same sort of pieces, but like they do something different in each story, and so it's not like, oh yeah, okay, trudge over here, go to this carriage, okay, trudge over here, go to the church. Like every game, it varies, and what you're looking to get done varies, and so even though the pieces are the same, there's a lot of them, and they all do different things in the different bits, so it stays fresh.
And aside from that, you have nice wooden bits. Each character gets 2 standing figures and then 3 movement figures that allow you to kind of move around the board. This has sort of a miniatures vibe where you're kind of measuring but not measuring. You're sort of running around terrain, but it's not really terrain type of thing going on. Nice wooden bits. I will note, though, there are a group of seals that all go in a bag. There are a group of discs that all go in a bag, and there's a group of cubes that all go in a bag. And having the discs and the seals both be round, even though they're different materials, one's wood and one's cardboard, sometimes that was a little bit tricky to find when you were trying to advance the game. So that was one downside to me, but those components were quality. The board itself is quality. The storybook that comes with this game is gorgeous. It has this kind of leather-bound look to it with nice ribbons. It's got occasional evocative illustrations. It's a nice piece of component work from Kosmos here. I will say, and I think this matches with the cover of the box itself, art style I could take or leave. I mean, it's not exciting. It's just kind of meh. Yes, very meh and very sort of one note in terms of the color. There's nothing really that like grabs your attention. Yeah, it's not from that standpoint a visually appealing game. Even though the advent calendar part looks really cool and the storybook looks really cool, visually the individual pieces of art, it does have this kind of flatness to it. It doesn't have as much vibrancy as the rest of the game does. The only thing that I think the flatness does provide is there are certain spaces where your character is safe, like in the shade versus not, in a clearing versus not, and the art really makes those spaces very clear, and you're not questioning where you are, what's going on at any time. The art is very clear on those kind of things. Well, and add in that it on the back of the book, it does a nice functional thing in laying out where are these different guards, because there are guards that come and go that you'll flip from time to time, and guard number 12 and guard number 9 are, who knows where those are off the top of your head. It lays it out on the back of the book so that it's easy to go find them, flip them over. It helps the game move along smoothly. It takes what could have been a fiddly experience and makes it feel like you're moving the world, advancing the world. And I thought that was successful. And again, more successes than failures. It is very functional. You're correct. The thing you mentioned about being in the shade versus not in the shade, very key in this game, because if you are standing in the shade, you can't be arrested by the guards that will pop up. If you're standing in a clearing, if the right guard is in the right clearing, oops, you could get arrested. Hope in the land could go down. You could hasten your demise and move towards a bad end sooner than you probably want to. So there you go. That's art and components. The gameplay of this. And what's interesting to me, Abby, in thinking about this is it's so thin in terms of mechanics. It's so very thin. It's move around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's move around. It's draw a cube out of a bag, look at something. But it just works. I don't know what to say other than it just works. It gets you in the spirit of, we got to move fast. We got to solve this before this happens. We got to get this done. We've got to go here. And, oh, this didn't work. And there's legitimate choice as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. A lot of like the story will start out and it'll say, think closely about where you want to go. And I'm like, oh, why does it always say that? We're going here. Oh, wrong choice. Okay, go here. Oh, wrong choice. Like, you really do need to think. You really do have multiple choices that you can make. There isn't always a really super clear, obvious path on what you're doing. And so you're just sort of like, good luck, here we go. Like, we definitely have not succeeded and had to go back and redo one. And I definitely thought on the redoing it, like, okay, great. Well, now we know to do da-da-da-da-da. And then it changed it. And it was like, nope, this isn't any help at all. And it was like, oh, it's a completely new story. They've really changed everything around to keep it fresh, even if you lose.
Right. Which, that can be so frustrating in some of these games where you put in all this effort, you're trying to beat this mission, you're trying to advance, and you're trying to move on to the next thing. And then it's like, sorry, you lost. Start over. Good luck. I will say, we have to admit something. We did on one of these missions effectively cheat.
No, we didn't effectively cheat. We cheated.
Yeah, 100%.
Point blank,
100%
100% cheated.
Yeah. We don't want to play this again. We're just going to say we're close enough. Like, I get there next turn. It's fine. And I think that's okay if that's what you want your gaming experience to be in this case. It is one of those where, because you have to flip and reset and do this over and over again, if you lose in clearly I lost fashion, you're probably going to want to reset it to go through the story again and experience it and see the changes. If it's a close loss, some of the fiddliness in the setup might have you say, we did it though, didn't we? Yeah, we did it. Okay. So I will say this too. I appreciate that the game gives you optional things to accomplish, things that aren't necessary but add flavor to the world. And it also gives you options that will affect the story at different points. I won't say much more than that, just that there are choices that you can make as you successfully complete an adventure that will affect subsequent adventures. And I thought that was a really cool element to the game. It feels like this big open world that you get familiar with because there are familiar elements. There's the same person I've talked to 8 times, and they didn't provide me useful information the first 7, but this time, they had that one little nugget to help you get where you needed to go. So it blends this sort of critical thinking, this movement puzzle, and an interesting story, which I guess we'll get into in a bit.
Yeah.
Were you surprised we played this as much as we did?
Yeah. I mean, it's not even just that, like, you get to decide, like, okay, am I going to go to the blacksmith, or am I going to go talk to the weirdo in the woods? But also, when you go talk to the blacksmith, then it gives you a little conversation and says, do you want to ask them for aid? Do you want to ask them how to break into the castle? Do you want to ask them how to marry someone? Like, they ask all these random, you get choices. So even in the same approaching of a character, you can change choices. You can go, oh, actually, we need aid because we're dying. Like, you can make choices throughout the game in a way that keeps it interesting and fresh.
And I will say, if it sounds like we're being vague on the gameplay, some of that is to avoid spoilers. Some of that is the margaritas, but some of that is to avoid spoilers.
Yeah, for mine, it's just spoilers. I only had 1 margarita.
Yes, very responsible. So I think that's good enough for gameplay. I mean, really a positive experience, and I think I was surprised at the degree to which I enjoyed this experience, this kind of collaborative piece. I'll ask you this before we move on. We played this at 2 players. We have played most of the way through the campaign. Do you think this would have been better with 3 or 4?
No. I actually think this would be worse with more people.
Why?
Because the board is oriented to be only seen from one direction. Like, yes, you could look at it upside down and that wouldn't be that terrible, but all the numbers face one singular direction. So sitting around the board, someone's going to be at somewhat of a disadvantage. And also there is decision making to happen in it where you have to go, are we going to do this or are we going to do that? Like, what are we trying to do? And to get 4 people to align to that, to be doing that, to be making strategic choices, like we're like, okay, we don't want this person to come after us, so you go here and I go there. To get everyone aligned and to make it work could be more difficult.
Theme and story. Did the theme help with this game, or would this same system be better with a different story to tell? I'll say this. I think with what they've done here, and there's something about the wooden bits, the arrows, the look of it, I do get more invested in the tales and adventures of Robin Hood playing this game than I had been previous to.
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, have never actually watched Robin Hood, so not familiar with the full story besides like man who steals from the rich and gives to the poor. Like, that's about it for my Robin Hood knowledge. So yeah, I'm definitely invested in the story.
Surprisingly so to me.
Yeah, that is not something that's important to me in a game at all, and it's very enjoyable in this game.
Do you think they could, and I think this is the case, I think they could take this same system with the living board, the kind of advent calendar look to it, and have this be a space station, have this be a park, have this be a city. I don't know. Take your pick. But I think you could use this same system, the whatever system, and create some other compelling story experiences.
Oh, for sure. And I think with the book, like the actual physical book that comes in this one is the Robin Hood, like this would be a good way to take a book existing IP into a board game, like a Harry Potter or something like that.
Oh, man. Oh, if you had Hogwarts as the board instead?
Yeah, and you have like the moving stairs, so you can flip pieces and they move. You have portraits that disappear and appear in pictures and stuff like that.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
That'd be absolutely, yeah. If you have an iconic location, like for instance, Sherwood Forest is a known thing with Robin Hood. Hogwarts absolutely would fit the bill for something like this as a game. Man, that'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
That would be pretty good. That's a good idea. Man. Okay, well, I know it was short and sweet. Before we get to our final thoughts, the Guild had one thought. BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, on the Adventures of Robin Hood, beautiful to look at, boring to play the tutorial, but gets so much better as you dive into the later parts of the game. Stick with it. The game really ramps up after the first scenario and has lots of twists and turns that I was not expecting. It seems to be geared for families, so I guess some gamers will find it a little simple, but we enjoyed playing it a lot. Many games of this type, I should say, devolve into abstracts. I'll move this yellow piece to do damage to that red piece, but something about the story really feels thematic, like a grand adventure you were experiencing with Robin Hood and friends. Totally.
Completely agree.
Yeah, good thoughts, BJ. Well, we have gotten to our final thoughts and rating. Typically at the Dukes of Dice, we rate things on a 6-point scale. 1 being bad, bad, so very bad. 6 being, oh man, top 10 contender. Abby has a slightly different...
Oh, man.
Oh, man, what a game. Abby has a slightly different version of this very same scale, which is effectively, if I asked you to play this game, what would your reaction be? So those 6 are...
6, heck yeah. 5, yeah. 4, sure. 3, okay. 2, 1, no.
So for this, I actually listened to your response when I suggested we play this game. And I'm curious if it'll line up with your actual final thoughts on this game. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
It's a 5. It's a yeah.
Talk it through.
I mean, so to be totally fair, you ask me to play games quite regularly, and we have a small child, and there are a lot of times where I put her to sleep and I think, I don't want to play a game. Like, okay, I'll play some cribbage. But Robin Hood, you've been like, do you want to play Robin Hood? Yeah. Like, great. Let's do a story. It usually takes 45 minutes. It's not some huge time commitment. It's enthralling. It's exciting. We're working on it together. Yeah. I really, really enjoy it.
Would be good for families.
For sure.
Would recommend. Let the record reflect that your actual response when I asked you to play this on more than one occasion was, sure.
Well, sorry.
Actual thoughts are a yeah. I was wondering if these two would line up, so they're not terribly far apart. For my part, I'm right in that same ballpark with you. I'm going to give this one a 5. A great game. Will rarely turn down a play of it. I anticipate we will wrap up this campaign, and based on the theme, I don't know if I would have expected we would have enjoyed this as much as we did. I would say it was a pleasant surprise, an innovative system that does a great job of bringing something on the tabletop to life without a ton of components, a ton of bits, a ton of other things, but just a lot of ingenuity in the board itself. Combine that with a book with multiple choices and an interesting story, you have yourself a pretty dang good experience. So that'll do it for our review of The Adventures of Robin Hood. Abby gives this one a yeah.
Yeah.
0. I'm not going to explain that. You'll have to try and figure out, listeners, where that could have possibly come from.
You have been told in this whole review, I did mention where that came from.
Oh yeah, maybe.
I know I 100% said the thing where that came from.
Okay. Well, we'll leave the mystery to folks to listen to this multiple times to try and solve. I don't think any. I don't think. Yeah. Abby saying in the background. My dad, loyal listener, especially when Abby is on, is going to be very confused. Yeah, he might be confused. Anyway.
Sorry, G.
All right. G is his grandpa name. In any case, that'll do it for our review of The Adventures of Robin Hood. Abby gives this one a yeah. I give this one a 5.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
All right, next up, the Dukes Quadruple-Take. And a year ago, Sean, a couple of heavy hitters released in 2020. Really, the two games of that year. Although they kind of slipped into this year, and more folks may associate them with, who knows. Anyway, episode 242, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Dune, where we discussed Dune Imperium and Lost Ruins of Arnak. And we did something unusual, Sean. We pitted these two games head to head. You gave this one a listen. Jeremy Howard joined us for this episode. What did we have to say about these two games?
Well, let's be clear, Alex. This was a 2-hour, 46-minute episode where we spent pretty much the entire time talking about these two games. We completely abandoned our regular format, and all we did was talk about these two games. And so the effort to go back and figure out what was said was really difficult. So much so that when it came time for me to find what you had to say about Arnak, I couldn't find it and I gave up. So whoopsie. All right. So we reviewed these together because they were both, deck builders with a board element, came out around the same time. And let's talk about Dune Imperium first. I gave it a 5. I said, this is a fantastic game, but if I'm trying to capture the true battle for Arrakis, I'm going to play the actual Dune game, which is more of kind of a war game. But I like this well enough. Raquel loved this game. She was really good at this game. It's really kind of annoying how good at this game that she was. I had said that I liked the worker placement. Oh yeah, that's the thing too. Not just a board element, but deck builder with worker placement. I liked the worker placement, but I thought some of the deck building strategies and synergies were a little bit lacking. You, Alex, and by the way, I'm a huge Dune fan. Huge. You gave this unquestionably a 6. You said this is a true contender for the top 10. You found this game super thematic. You had super high highs. You loved this game. Shockingly, way more than I loved it. So
I stand by that, as we'll talk about here, just to spoil it. Game's incredible.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that it spoils your past review. I guess.
No. Let me be
Okay,
clear. It hasn't moved.
Yeah.
In my estimation.
Okay.
Carry on though.
Okay. And then Lost Ruins of Arnak. This is more of kind of a pulp adventure, Indiana Jones style worker placement, deck builder game where you are going out into this jungle and you're getting all of these different resources that you're going to use to spend on new cards and on ascending the temple track and fighting these monsters and opening up new worker placement spots. Lots of stuff going on here. I gave this game a 5. And we did this really weird thing, Alex, where at my insistence, where we did this like 3-point, because it was head to head. I wanted some more kind of an objective scoring. So we did this like 3-point thing on all these different categories. This game and this weird scoring system of mine scored way higher. It scored, I think, 14 out of 15. And I think Dune Imperium scored, I think I heard it was like 11 out of 15 or something. I loved this game. I really enjoyed Lost Ruins of Arnak more than Dune Imperium, despite being a massive Dune fanboy. But I really enjoyed the deck building more in Lost Ruins of Arnak. And yeah, it's this kind of generic, pulp adventurer theme, but I really enjoyed it. For what I think was essentially a medium weight Euro, which is something I'm not super crazy about nowadays. The biggest thing holding this game back for me was Raquel did not like it. And so I'm like, well, then there's no point in me owning a copy of it. I'll play the Empire, but bummer. Alex, you gave it a 5, and I think you liked it well enough, but I don't remember what else you said, and I couldn't find it. So,
I mean, what I do remember specifically was saying, because at the time, Lost Ruins of Arnak was ahead in the ratings and ahead in the rankings compared to Dune Imperium.
Mm-hmm.
Out the gate it was. And I said, I think over time, Dune Imperium will, or at the very least should, pass Arnak.
Yeah.
And as an update to that, Sean, it absolutely has.
Yeah.
As of the time of this recording, ranked 18th overall in the history of games, Dune Imperium is, whereas Lost Ruins of Arnak is 33rd. Both excellent scores, and I think they're both really, really good games. For my money, though, I mean, Dune Imperium to me just blew Arnak out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
It worked well with my brain, and I have played it. I've, by the way, played both games since we did this review. Both games.
Yeah.
But I have tended to still enjoy Imperium and the mechanical brilliance of that system more than the amount of enjoyment I get out of Arnak, which has some good things going for it, but isn't quite as much of a love as that one was. So, and I'll say this too, Sean, the Guild won almost 100% backed that view up of Dune Imperium over Arnak, which I was surprised about because it felt more controversial at the time, and it doesn't feel so controversial now. So Al, before we dive into that, Sean, have you played either of these games since?
So here's what's interesting. I have probably played Dune Imperium at least 3 times since then. I have played Arnak 0 times since then. And it's really a function of what other people have wanted to do. Dune is, and I think that's part of it too. Like, I'm not saying that Dune Imperium is not a great game, because it is a great game, but I think that IP certainly helps it over pulp, generic pulp adventure game. But if I were given the choice, I would still rather play Arnak. But just the times it's come up, people will more often think, let's play Dune Imperium versus Arnak. I mean, there's something, I don't want to say there's something forgettable about Arnak, because I really dig it, but I just know I'm going to have a harder time convincing people to play it, because if I bring it up, someone will be like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. Oh, well, why don't we just do Dune Imperium? And that's kind of a bummer. I mean, I think they're, like I said, they're both great. I gave them both very solid 5s, but I gave the slight edge to Arnak. So, and I'll just say this, they're going to stay at very strong 5s for both of them. I have not played the Arnak expansions out. I have yet to play that. Very interested in playing that. The Dune expansion, House of Ix, is supposed to be coming out fairly shortly here. And that's gonna fly off the shelves. I think Rory said he got like 5. I'm like, you should have gotten 12. Like,
yes.
more.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting whether the Ix expansion elevates the game to a 6 or not. I've heard good things about the expansion. I'm certainly eager to play it. I'm going to pick up a copy when it becomes available. But yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious to see. I don't have a huge burning desire to necessarily play the Arnak expansion, though I'm certainly happy to. Whereas I do have a much stronger desire to play the Dune Imperium House of Ix expansion.
Okay, fair enough. Well, as you mentioned, the demand on the other side of this for Dune Imperium has been incredibly high. Matthew S. over in the Guild said, I have played Dune Imperium 4 times and Lost Ruins of Arnak once. I would say that Arnak has better deck building, but Dune Imperium is the better game overall. The ability to occupy worker placement spots based on your cards in hand was much more restrictive in Dune, which was frustrating and the reason I didn't keep the game. Also, I have multiple friends and acquaintances that own it anyway. But what is going on the board itself is much more interesting right from the start, and there's a more of a dramatic arc on top of that as well. Additionally, it seems to me there are only really 2 main strategies in Arnak, whereas there are at least 3 or 4 in Dune. Do you agree with that? Better deck building in Arnak, but well, you don't agree because you think Arnak's the better game overall, but would it follow too that you think, yeah, okay, yes on
better
both.
deck building in Arnak, yes.
Okay.
But again, Ix is supposed to potentially correct that.
I'm all about trying it. Like I enjoyed that game so much. I can't imagine it would ruin it. And even if it did, you just don't play with it. So I'm excited to see what twists and turns that thing adds. I know very little about it.
Yeah. And then Zicky W said, Dune Imperium was an insta-buy for me. The Dune IP is my favorite, and the gameplay promised a deck-building Euro with an excellent solo version. I initially only played solo due to the COVID lockdowns, but loved the varying startups and paths to victory. It was one of the first games I played out of lockdown, and we played multiple 4-player games in a row. We loved it. The tension of getting the board space you want or the card you want, the decision to invest heavily in combat or just to jump in and grab the scraps were all very satisfying.
Yes, indeed. Adam Dalton said, both made my top 10 games of 2020 list. When I made that list a little over a year ago, I put Arnak several slots above Dune. However, over the past year, I've played both about 10 times, and I put Dune above Arnak now. The more and more I've played Dune, the more and more I've seen different strategies take place and compete for the win. There have been some crazy finishes to games. In Arnak, if you do poorly on the research track, you're just not going to win the game. That said, both are amazing games, and I'm happy they're in my collection. I would rate both a 5 on the Ducal scale.
And then finally, D. Shannon said, I love everything about Lost Ruins of Arnak, period.
No.
Oh, he goes on. Sorry.
Yeah.
I love everything about Lost Ruins of Arnak, except playing it. It presents a tight efficiency puzzle, but there is not enough variety for me. Same cards, same artifacts, same goal. Move up the research track efficiently. This hits a low 3 for me, but it might hit a 2 if it weren't so darn pretty. Oof.
Yeah. Nastiness. Look, I'm not that low on Lost Ruins of Arnak, but I do have a strong preference here. And it appears board gamers as a whole do as well. So I feel validated on this one, Sean.
No, it's fine. These are all opinions. It's great. Whatever.
I mean, some of them are clearly more right than other ones, though.
If that's what you need to get through your sleepless nights, then by all means.
It might be. That might be helpful, actually. Anyway. All right. Well, that'll do it for the double take. Basically stays where it is for Sean, stays where it is for me. On to the best of the rest, the names we didn't pick. Sean, there were some good ones, and you were, I would say, broadly indifferent on this theming batch as a whole. Not because they're bad names, but just because there wasn't a clear, absolutely has to be picked winner.
They're all very solid. You're right. Very often there's like 1 or 2 that jump out, and these were all very solid names. So I'll go first here. First one from Matthew S. Friar Tuckbox. There's Friar Tuck from Robin Hood's Legend. And then we got 2 deck builders, so Tuck Box. A bunch of Tuck Boxes for deck builders.
Yeah, good one. The name father, Steve O'Rourke with Sherwood, reference to Sherwood Forest, reference to Sherwood Play, those other games, and, perhaps not intentionally at the time it was put out there, a reference to the Abbey rating system, which includes Sure as one of the characteristics. So, Yeah, clever name. And I think for me, so Sean, you basically abdicated in your ducal naming responsibilities.
I did.
And we ultimately had Abby make this call. And she appreciated the connection to her own rating system. But our winner, Kyle Kelly, it was the Spice Girls thing. So I'd say this one was perhaps the runner-up. I think for me, the only reason it maybe didn't get picked was if it just was standing alone as Sure Would, it might have been, I don't know, tough in a podcast feed to understand exactly what we were talking about. Really clever, though, as always.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Baker Mitchell suggested Robin Hood Men in Still Suits. That's a reference to the Mel Brooks Robin Hood Men in Tights, where he reuses a bunch of the same jokes from a bunch of his movies, but it's still funny. And then still suits are what the Fremen wear in the Dune universe. So just kind of a nice little blend of the two. Have you seen Robin Hood Men in Tights, Alex?
I have not.
Have you seen any Mel Brooks movies?
I've seen a ton of Mel Brooks movies.
Okay.
I've seen
Just not that one.
I've seen The Producers. I've seen Blazing Saddles. I've seen Spaceballs. It's just not that one.
Okay.
I've seen Young Frankenstein too. Let me add that in.
Yeah.
I've seen quite a few Mel Brooks movies. Just not
Young
that
Frankenstein's probably the best, I think, for my taste, my opinion.
And this may be nostalgia, but I had on DVD Blazing Saddles and Spaceballs, and adored both of those movies. So I don't know which one I would choose. Young Frankenstein is quite good as well.
It's quite good.
Yeah. Next up, D. Shannon with Fremen and Robin, sort of a Batman and Robin reference, referencing the Fremen from Dune and referencing Robin from Robin Hood.
And then finally, Jeremiah Brammer suggested Best Archer in the Forest. And I have no idea what that means, Alex.
It means you're the best archer in the forest, Sean.
Well, okay.
I know, he explains it on the Guild. He says, How Lost Ruins, so the best was for How Lost Ruins of Arnak and Dune Imperium, widely considered the best games of 2020.
Sure.
Archer, referencing Robin Hood. In the Forest, How Lost Ruins of Arnak and Adventures of Robin Hood are both set in a forest/jungle. So some ties to the various games.
Perfect. Love it. Makes sense.
Awesome. Well, that'll do it for this episode. Sean, I saw a big yawn from you. I'm surprised I haven't yawned more this episode myself.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty tired. A lot of early mornings, a lot of late nights, Alex. But and you're tired for different reasons. Just, a newborn.
Yeah. Well, at what point are they not a newborn? Right? 3 months? We're about 3 months old now.
Is this a callback to our Happy New Year discussion from last episode?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Because she's not wearing newborn-sized outfits anymore.
Okay. So if I call her a newborn when she's 4, you would agree that that's inappropriate.
Yes, a little too distant. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, like you said, Alex, this will do it for episode 267. Thanks again to Kyle Kelly for the name of the episode. If you want to be my archer, already sang once, don't need to punish you all again. Until next time, I forgot to say what I was going to say there. I'm like, you have something to say, Alex? No, I just ended. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on January 20th, 2022. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsor, Game Toppers LLC. You can learn all you want to know about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. Remember, if it's not a showstopper, it's not a Game Topper. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on.